Cook tops off a dominant display as Toyota take their first race to pole victory.
Hello and welcome back to the British Touring Car Podcast. We've just woken up from the race to pole and qualifying.
Too negative. Be more positive.
It was a little tardy, wasn't it?
It has fallen into the same category that everything else has this year, in that the first 2 or 3 laps were actually quite interesting. We did see quite a few overtakes, but after that, it sort of faded away. I've just realised I left my book in the other room with my notes in.
Okay. Well, he goes and gets that. We obviously had qualifying to account for in the first place. Obviously, 2 sessions earlier in the day leading up to the race to pole, and we had a couple of incidences through there as well.
Smooth.
Thank you.
That was really well timed.
Right. In qualifying earlier in the day, we had a couple of spins and some incidences while drivers were trying to push hard and trying to find the absolute limits of the car, and a couple of drivers overstepped those limits.
James Jordan explained on the grid that one of the reasons for that is that because the way you've got to set the car up to the car for the tyres, it means that the back end is quite naturally loose around Thruxton. And I think that was the cause for a lot of the spins. It's a circuit that you're pushing on for about probably 90% of the lap. There's only really 2 areas where you're not pushing so hard, which are the 2 complexes. And then that, we said it during actually when we were watching the race to pole, a lot of cars looked very, very fidgety.
Yeah, what I found quite surprising, and I don't know whether you picked up on it as well, is that during that 2 qualifying sessions, they were using the medium tyre. Yep. Whereas for all the races this weekend, they've got to use the hard tyre. So I do wonder whether the cars are obviously set up for that hard tyre, and on that medium, you'd expect a little bit more grip, but they may be set up in a slightly different way. Yeah,
there was some debate whether they could do a sprint on the medium because of the fact that it's a shorter race distance, but I think safety overcame that possibility, which is fair enough. We know that it's a circuit that is incredibly tough on tyres, so it's not a great surprise that it was felt that the hardest compound would be the safest compound in these conditions.
And in the end, having the safety car that we had, which we'll get onto, it actually meant that the sprint race ran for a little longer than they were expecting.
Yeah, that too. Right, so in terms of sort of the big news from the qualifying session, obviously Cook put the Toyota on pole, as he does. He is the king of Thruxton, as we all know. Ingram, 2nd. Sutton, 7th. They are the 2 main title protagonists. Newbie Proctor, who has stepped in for Sam Osborne, who has withdrawn on illness for the weekend. We'll cover that more off on the Sunday pod. Finished 4th. And interestingly, some regulatory news, that is news to me. Chilton had a grid drop for his crash with Selby at Alton Park. Yep. That applied to this race. I'd assumed it would have applied to race 1, but no.
To me, as you told me that information, I thought was absolutely bizarre. I thought that would have been pushed forward to the race 1 for the Sunday, because there is obviously less risk, I would say, doing it for this race. And it's almost like if you do it in the final race of the weekend, then you're not going to get as punished as you could if you did it in the first 2 races of the weekend.
I have a feeling that this is a quirk of the regulations that wasn't considered before the start of the season. I imagine, I've not read the regulations, I imagine it would say that it applies to the next race, and this is technically a race. Therefore, I wouldn't be surprised if we see that closed or changed for next season, should we say? Because I'm with you, it's daft. Yeah.
A couple of surprises for me, at least. BMW looked quite poor.
Agreed.
When it came to the qualifying and then in the race as well.
Yeah.
And the Audis also looked a little slower than I was expecting. Both of the Mercedes looked like they were a decent way ahead of them. Both 2 new cars to the grid this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump ahead slightly. The Mercedes looked really fast throughout the race as well, but they didn't look particularly stable. I think that they looked really quick, and I think that slippery shape was really playing its part. But yeah, they looked really, really like a gust of wind could turn them around. So yeah, difficult, I should imagine, for Robo and Morgan to control.
Should we get into the racing?
Yeah, Cook won. There we go. See you tomorrow. No, so Cook did get off the line well. Proctor then was able to get off the line too and helped Sutton move up the grid, defended Sutton from Morgan. Not surprising, we saw Proctor play this role last year for Virtue. I imagine he'll know what role he's supposed to be playing this weekend for Sutton and Camish. So no surprise.
He, even just from this opening qualifying session and race to pole, he's up there with both Camish and Sutton, able to help those 2 drivers out. I think is going to be absolutely critical. Not necessarily just for this weekend. If he is brought in later in the season, either for Selby or for Osborne, then it could be interesting to see whether they use him tactically. depending how close the championship fight gets towards the end of the season.
Agreed. We did see a little bit of sort of rough and tumble and a few cars moving positions, which, as I say, we've become accustomed to on the opening couple of laps. Then the safety car was deployed as we saw Collard in strife. Good for you, as you predict him to win the race.
I was going to say, there go my hopes of him getting me a point. Didn't look anything untoward, didn't look like there was any contact or anything. Looks like a mechanical or an electrical failure on the car, which may then also be linked to Chilton later in the race, going slow with a couple of laps left, coming into the pits and not finishing as well.
Yep, this deployed the safety car, which went round for a couple of laps. Then we saw an interesting restart by Cook, who went incredibly late and bunched the field up. This would have consequences further back.
I'm amazed at how late he went, considering Thruxton being such a fast-flowing circuit. You'd probably want that slingshot out of that final chicane to try and get as much of a lead as possible. It didn't have any.
It's a long run into turn one, though.
It didn't have any negative effect on him himself, but as you say, there was a consequence further down the grid where possibly 3, 4, 5 drivers might have got together. The replays weren't clear.
No, it looked from what we could see that Selby turned Rainford around, and then a couple of cars hit Rainford, including his teammate Gilbert, who had a problem with his bonnet after that. In fairness to Selby, I'm not saying he was responsible because, as you say, the replays aren't particularly helpful. Hopefully by tomorrow we'll have a bit of a clearer picture on that.
All we can say is that there was damage to the front of Rainford's car and the front of Nick Hamilton's car very clearly. And unfortunately, Gilbert was the one that probably came out the worst with a complete emued front nose of the BMW. Managed to drag it all back round to the pits the lap following, but none of them finished.
No, and Bensley was caught up in that.
Rainford did.
Yeah, Rainford did get back out. Bensley was caught up in that as well. We then saw Rowbottom go wide onto the grass and have a bit of a brown trouser moment, which allowed Morgan to get back through. Yep. And as you've alluded to, we saw Chilton on lap 14 limping, another problem at Hyundai. They've had a few electrical gremlins throughout the season so far, maybe similar problems today. And that pretty much sums up Cook won with relative ease. Should we go down to the circuit?
It makes a change for only 5 drivers not to finish a race to pole. You normally think, okay, keep it tight and keep it together.
Extenuating circumstances with the
the final finishing stand-ins are Cook, Ingram, Sutton, Camish, Proctor, Shedden, Morgan, Rowbottom, Mikey Doble for the Audi up in 9th, Dorlin 10th from Aaron Taylor-Smith, Smiley, Moffat, Patterson, and the final point for De Leon.
Maybe we should drop these races just to 4 laps, because after that it does seem to become a little bit of a slog. But
the fact that they were targeted as a sprint and they're still into double figures, I question that.
I will say though, in defence, just to make this near the 10-minute mark, F1 sprints are pretty good for the first few laps, and then they can get quite dull very quickly as well. And I think that is the problem. I think that when they're sold as this sort of quick, fast-paced, shortened racing, and then actually after the first lap or two, people decide, well, actually, it's not worth risking my car here for a 6th place when I can just do it off the line tomorrow.
Agreed. We'll bring you all the updates from tomorrow onwards on Monday evening, all being well. But yeah, we're going to be down at the track. So if you do see us there, do come and say hello, and we'll be happy to see you.
Bye for now.